Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how I made this beautiful dress. It is an off-shoulder dress with a cone flare and a ruffle sleeves. Please keep watching and let's get started. These are the fabric I'll be working with. I have this hard interfacing. It is what will make the cone flare to stand well. So you will need it to attach it to the fabric. I have about 4 yards here. I don't know how much I'll be using depending on the number of cone I'll be cutting. And I also have the main fabric, that is the Ankara, that will be used for the down part of the dress. And I have the plain fabric too. This plain fabric is linen. You can use crepe, you can use any fabric of your choice, and I have 1 yard of it. The Ankara fabric, I have 6 yards of it, and that is what we'll be using for this project. So now I have my basic bodice pattern here, the front pattern. I'll be starting with the front pattern. The length of this front pattern is 18 inches. That is the length of the front pattern. And I've gone ahead to mark my waist and bust measurement. I've taken in my darts. And the next thing I'll be doing is to convert this basic pattern to an off-shoulder pattern. So from the top, I have the shoulder line, the chest line, the bust line, the under bust line, and the waist line. I've gone ahead to mark the bust measurements and the waist measurements, and the dart is inclusive in the waist measurements there. There is no sewing allowance on this pattern. The next thing is to determine where you want the off-shoulder to start from. For this project, I'll minus 4.5 from the shoulder line. You can use 5, you can use 6, depending on how off you want it to be. So I'm marking 4.5 from the shoulder line, and I'll connect with a ruler. So that is where the off-shoulder will start from. Now, I will extend the nipple to nipple line to this off-shoulder line. What I used for the nipple to nipple before is 4.5. So I'll mark the same 4.5 now, and I'll connect it to the bust line. We have to tighten the under bust now. So to tighten the under bust, I'll mark half an inch on both sides at the under bust. I'll mark half an inch on both sides, and I'll connect it with a curved ruler to the bust points. I decided to use 0.75 on this part, so instead of the half inch I used earlier, I'm using 0.75 on this part. So I'll connect it to the waistline now. After tightening the under bust, we have to tighten the over bust too. To tighten the over bust, we are going to do it on the off-shoulder line I marked earlier. So I'll go in by 0.75 on both sides, and I'll connect it to the bust point. The last thing we are going to do on this front pattern is to take in the bust dart. So for this project, the bust dart I'll take is 2 inches. So from the bust line, I'll mark 2 inches downward, and I'll connect it to the bust point. So the difference between the front and back half length of this measurement I'm working with is 2 inches. If you look closely at the dress, you see that there's a tiny opening at the front. So from the center front, I'll come in by 1/4 of an inch. From the center front, I'm coming in by 1/4 of an inch, then I'll come down by 1 inch, and I'll just connect straight with my curve. That is all on the front pattern. I'll cut it out now. This is the basic bodice pattern for the back, and the length of this back pattern is 16 inches. I have my bust measurement already marked out, and I have my waist measurement already marked out, and the dart is inclusive in the measurement marked out on the waist. There is no sewing allowance on this pattern, but I have my zip allowance. What I'll do next is that For the off shoulder line, we came down by 4.5 for the front pattern. So I'll be doing the same thing to this back pattern. From the shoulder line, I measured out 4.5 and I connected with a straight line. The next thing I'll do is to extend the nipple to nipple line to the off shoulder line. I'll mark out 4.5 inches and I'll connect it to the chest line. I'll go in by 0.25 on both sides and I'll connect it with a ruler straight down to the waistline. I'll measure out the dart intake on the chest line. I'll measure it and I'll replace it back. Then I'll connect to the waistline. I am closing the dart on this pattern. I don't want a dart at the back, so I'll go in with my masking tape now and close it. I want a bit of slant at the back neckline, so I'm coming down by 1 inch there. I'll come down by 1 inch at the zip area, then I'll connect it back, just to have a bit of slant at the back. That is all on the back pattern. The next thing now is to draft the cone for the flare. These are my front and back pieces. You can see that the side front and the side back matches up perfectly. So that is how to know that your pattern is right before you transfer it to fabric. For the flare part, the first thing you have to decide is how many cone you want on the flare, how many panels of cone you want on the flare. For this project, I want 9 cones. And it is the waist measurement that will help us to determine that. The waist measurement I'm working with is 36. So I'll divide the 36 by 9 inches because I want 9 panels of cone on the flare. So 36 divided by 9, I have 4. So that means the width of each cone will be 4 on the waistline. Then from the down part, you have to determine how wide you want the down part of the cone to be. Now for me, I want it as wide as 20. So the upper part of the cone will be 4 inches and the down part will be 20 inches. But because I want to draft it on fold now, the upper part will be 2 inches, then the down part will be 10 inches. I hope you understand. Because I want to draft it on fold, the upper part will be 2 inches while the down part will be 10 inches. So by the time I open it up, the upper part will be 4 inches and the down part will be 20 inches. The length of the cone depends on what you get after you must have minus the half length of the dress from the full length of the dress. So you can determine the length yourself. You minus your half length from the full length of the dress. So now at the down part, I'm measuring 10 inches and at the upper part, I measured out 2 inches. I'll connect with a ruler. And after connecting, I will also add 0.5 inches allowance for stitching. To get that cone effect, from the hem line at the bottom, I'll come up by 3 inches. You can decide to use 4 inches or even 5 inches, depending on how you want the cone effect to be. But for me, I'm using 3 inches. 4 inches is fine and even 5 inches is also fine. I'll come in with a curved ruler now and connect it from that 3 inches point to the other end. I am transferring the cone pattern to fabric now. Like I said earlier, my fabric will be on fold when transferring to fabric. So my fabric is on fold now and I'll place my pattern on it. I'll pin it down and cut it out. So I'll be cutting 9 pieces of this. I have cut out one piece now. I'll go ahead and cut out the other 8 pieces and I'll show you. I have cut out the 9 pieces now. The parts that will join the zip together at the center back, you have to add extra 1 inch to it, to each of the pieces that will be at the center back. The parts that will hold the zip, you have to add extra. You can add 0.5 or 1 inch so that you can be able to join your zip to it. I'll go ahead now and cut the interfacing the same way the Ankara fabric is. I'll cut the interfacing and the lining the same way and I'll show you. This is it now. I have cut out the interfacing and I have ironed it on the Ankara fabric. I have ironed it on all the 9 pieces and I also cut out my lining the same way I cut out the Ankara. The next thing I'll do now is to place the lining on the Ankara. I'll place the lining and I'll go ahead and stitch the end part, the down part of the Ankara. I'll go ahead and stitch the down parts. That is what I'll do now. Then after stitching the down part, I'll bring it back and show you. This is it after I was done stitching the down part and I went ahead to iron it. So this is what it is looking like and I made a top stitch on the lining part. So this is what it is looking like. I've done the same thing to the other pieces. The next thing now is to join all the pieces together. So I'll go ahead now and join them all together, then I'll show you. Moving on to the upper part of the dress now, I've transferred my patterns to fabric and I added half inch around the patterns, and for the side joining I added 1.5 inches. So go ahead and add all your allowance to the patterns and cut it out. I have also cut out my lining and I cut out interfacing a soft one. I'll be adding a soft one to the main fabric of the upper parts, and I'll also be adding wording to it, also wording to the front part. So I've cut out the wording too. I'll go ahead now and iron the interfacing on the main fabric. I'll also iron the wording on it. I'll do the same thing to the side pieces of the front. I'll iron the interfacing and iron the wording, then I'll show you. I am bringing back the back pattern now because I decided that I don't want to add zip to the upper part of the back of the dress. I don't want a zip there, so that is why I'm cutting out the zip allowance first. But if you know that you want to add zip to your dress, to the full length of the dress, you can skip this part. So now, because I want to add a lacing at the back, at the top parts of the pattern now, I marked 2.5 inches and at the bottom part I marked 1.5 inches. I'll connect with a straight line and cut it out. Because we'll be adding lacing to the back, you have to cut out some part of the back so that by the time you attach the loops, it will fit in well. I'll go ahead and transfer to fabric now, but if you want a zip all through the back of your dress, please keep this part. Just go ahead with the initial pattern. I have transferred to fabric now and I've added my allowance to the pattern and I've cut out my lining also. This is after joining all the cones together and this is what we have. So what you can do now is to go to your overlocker and overlock all the raw edges there. Overlock it so that it is looking nice, and go over to the ironing table and iron it properly. But this is what it is looking like. This is what the upper part of the dress is looking like now. I've gone ahead to turn the neckline of the front piece with lining, and this is what we have. For the back of the dress, I've gone ahead to cut out my modesty panel and I've added loops to the back. If you don't know how to cut out a modesty panel or cut out loops for the back of your dress, I'll put the link in the description box so that you can watch the video where I showed you how to cut out modesty panel and cut out loops. The next thing now is to cut out the sleeve for the dress. If you look at the picture closely, you will see that the sleeve has a ruffle, but before we can achieve that ruffle, you have to have a basic sleeve where the ruffle will sit on. The most important measurement to take when making an off-shoulder dress is to measure around the shoulder together with the arms. So either for yourself or for your clients, you have to measure around the shoulder together with the arms. That is the most important measurement to take. That will help you to determine the width of the sleeve you'll be cutting out to complete the whole measurement for the round shoulder with the arms. The round shoulder of the measurement I'm working with is 48. So now I'll measure around the front and back of the upper part now. Whatever I get, I'll make sure I add whatever I took out to get for the lacing at the back. I'll make sure I add it. Then whatever I get, I'll minus it from the 48 inches, the round shoulder measurement, and whatever I get is what I'll be cutting out as the width of the sleeve. So this is what I cut out for the sleeve part where the ruffle will sit on. The length I cut out is 6 inches. That is the length I'm having here now. It is 6 inches. And you determine the width yourself from the explanation I made earlier. I cut out 4 pieces of the sleeve because I'll be using the same fabric as the lining. I'll go ahead now and turn the upper part and the down part, and I'll show you. This is what we have after I was done turning with the lining. The next thing now is to cut out the ruffled part of the sleeve. But before then, I'll mark out a circular line on the sleeve. It is this line that will follow to attach the ruffle on the sleeve. Make sure to leave a space of ½ inch on both sides of the sleeve. That is what you use to join into the dress. To cut out the ruffle, I'll fold my fabric into 4. This is what I have left from the 6 yards of Ankara, and this is what I'll be using for the ruffle parts. I'll fold it into 4. After folding into 4, the length I have here is about 24 inches by 23 inches. I am cutting out the self edge at the down part so that it is not included in the ruffle. I'll cut it out now, then I'll get the center point for this fabric. Once I get the center point, I'll mark out 2 inches from that center point. I'll mark out 2 inches round the center point and connect it like a circle. I want the length of the flounce to be 3 inches. So once I'm done marking out the circle, I'll start from the top part and I'll mark 3 inches. Once I mark the 3 inches, I'll connect it back into the circle. I mark 3 inches first and I'll connect it back into the circle. Then I'll start marking the 3 inches round the circle. Once I'm done marking out the flounce, I'll cut it out. This is what I have after I was done cutting. I'll go over to the sewing machine now and stitch the down part of the flounce. I'll stitch round the down part. Once I'm done stitching, I'll iron it and overlock the top part. Then I'll show you. This is what I have now after I was done with the down part, and also I've ironed it and I've overlocked the upper part of the flounce, and this is what we have. I'll go ahead now and stitch the flounce on the sleeves following the lines I created earlier. I'll follow the lines, and in between I'll create pleats, small pleats in between, and I'll follow the lines and stitch it round. Then I'll show you what to do next. This is it after I was done stitching the flounce to the sleeves, and this is what we have. It is time to attach it to the dress now. I'll pick the front part first, and I'll attach one side of the sleeve to the front part without the lining. Then I will use the lining to cover it up. Then for the back, I will attach the other side of the back. I will attach the other side of the sleeve to the back. Then I will also use the lining to cover it up. I'll go over to the sewing machine now and do that, and I'll show you what to do next. This is it after I was done attaching the sleeve, and I went ahead to iron it. So go ahead and iron yours properly. The next thing now is to join the sides together. The front and the back, I'll join the sides together. Then I'll attach the down parts of the dress. I have joined the sides now, and this is what we have. I went ahead to overlock it. I'll be joining the down part to it now. For the down part, I have fixed my zip. I have fixed my zip to the skirt part, and I'll just be attaching it to the upper part to complete the full length of the dress. So I'm gonna add to fix my zip. I'll just attach it to the upper part, and I'll show you the finished look. Thank you guys for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Please turn on your notification bell so that you can get notified whenever I upload a new video. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.